Swans have a challenging first 2 weeks. Once they've made it past that first fortnight, they've passed through one of the most vulnerable periods of their life. The time between now and the 3rd month birthday is very difficult and risky too. But they're grown a bit, and if they've made it this far, they're clearly able to meet their basic survival needs, such as being able to feed themselves, keep warm and avoid harmful situations. If a cygnet can make it to 3 months, there's a very good chance they will make it to independence. In other words, being able to fly off and leave the parents. In this section we will look at how the young progress from being classified as a baby to a recognizable young swan. This is the period of their life where they pass through the stage of the ugly duckling. The old story from Hans Christian Andersen, around 1843 and 1844. In reality, the cygnets are far from ugly at any time. They are simply transforming from a chick with lots of fluff, down, all over it, to a young swan with proper feathers and growing that characteristic long, flexible neck of Cygnus olor. No more free rides on mum. Once the cygnets get beyond 14 days old, one of the first things to stop are the free rides on mum and dad. The cygnets are getting noticeably larger and heavier now, too much for mum and dad to shoulder the weight of. The young are getting stronger every day, and with the increase in weight, they are able to sustain physical activity for longer periods of time. With the increase in weight, comes an increase in size. This reduces their surface area to volume ratio, so they are more efficient at maintaining body heat. Therefore, there will be less brooding and nestling into mum's wings and body from now on. In fact, from about 3 weeks of age, this hardly happens at all. Although, mum and dad will no longer ferry them around, their youngsters are still the equivalent of toddlers, so the pen and cob will still closely care for them for at least the next 6 months, but with decreasing intensity and attention. More nesting. Although the family have deserted the breeding nest where the babies were born, some families of swans still make other, smaller, nests during this time when they're actually bringing up their offspring. All family groups of swans have favorite spots where they like to stand, preen and have a sleep. Not all families, though, spend considerable time and energy pulling up nearby plants to use as materials to build a nest. These non-egg depository nests can be quite large in diameter. Some are over 8 feet across, but they are not built up to a high level, like some of the proper nests can be. This is because the family will not use that spot for weeks on end, like the egg-laying nests. What often happens is that they will use one location for a few days or a week. Then they'll switch their preference to somewhere else, where they may, or may not, build another nest for preening, etc. Favorite places for the swans to create these are rather like the sort of locations they choose for their proper breeding nest. Relatively secluded, shallow water surrounding the nest, near food plants, etc. I've seen substantial bulrush beds be significantly reduced by a pen and cob pulling up the stems and laying them down to form a comfortable nest site. A typical day for a young swan family. These little stations they create for themselves become an integral part of their daily activity. Swans, on the whole, have a life where one day is very similar to the next. The family will sleep together as a group, with the male and female swans making sure their cygnets are always close by, especially when they're very young. At first light, the cygnets will start to stir and you can hear lots of their contented calls coming from them. Various family members will have a bit of preen and shakedown. A shakedown is where they stand up and flap their wings back and forth a few times. The pen will then lead them to a food source, like some floating weed, overhanging vegetation, or the adults will pull up plant material for them to eat. The young will still consume a few insects, but the number they eat will decrease as they will have a growing preference for the normal swan diet of pondweed, etc. As their preference for plant material grows, they will start to upend to feed, holding their breath for longer and longer as they grow up. But they will not be sufficiently developed to match the adults for the time spent holding their breath until they have left the family unit. Periods of feeding could last anywhere between 20 minutes up to an hour. It depends on how quickly the cygnets tire. As they progress through these first 3 months, they can last for longer and longer periods of time before they let out their tired calls and the family will take a break. For this break, the pen will lead them, often by using high-pitched calls, to a sheltered spot, somewhere out of the main flow, if they're on a river, or to a suitable area of gently sloping banking, if they live on a pond or lake. If their nest is not too far away, they could return to that spot for their rest. The cob will normally follow on at the rear.